The humidity hangs heavy in the air, clinging to the skin like a wet sheet. It is late at night on July 22nd, 1991. Under the flickering yellow streetlights of Milwaukee, a man is running for his life. He is shirtless, sweating profusely, and his eyes are wide with a primal terror that few will ever know. But the most chilling detail is not his speed, or his fear. It is the silver pair of handcuffs dangling from his left wrist. He flags down a patrol car, gasping for breath, pointing a trembling finger back toward a nondescript brick building, the Oxford Apartments. He tells the officers that a freak inside tried to kill him, that the man held a knife to his chest and listened to his heartbeat. The officers have no idea that they are about to walk into a slaughterhouse. They are about to open the door to a nightmare that will change American history forever. Welcome to the Anomaly Archive. Officers Rolf Mueller and Robert Routh followed the terrified man, 32-year-old Tracy Edwards, back to apartment 213. When the door opened, they were greeted by a man who seemed unsettlingly normal. He had dirty blonde hair, thick aviator glasses, and a soft, monotone voice. This was Jeffrey Dahmer. He was calm, almost polite, offering an excuse about the handcuffs being part of a lover's quarrel. But as the officers stepped inside, something hit them instantly. The smell. It was thick and cloying, a putrid mixture of stale incense, bleach, and something far worse, something organic and rotting. Dahmer blamed it on a broken freezer and dead tropical fish. Officer Mueller began to look around. The apartment was cluttered, but not filthy. There were boxes of acid on the floor. A large blue 57-gallon drum stood in the corner of the bedroom. Guided by instinct, Mueller opened the top drawer of the bedside dresser. Inside, he found a knife, and scattered beneath it were Polaroid photographs. He picked one up, squinting in the dim light. It was not a normal photo. It was a picture of a human body, dismembered and posed in a gruesome fashion. He picked up another, a severed head resting in a sink. Mueller turned to his partner, holding up the photos, and said the words that signaled the end of Jeffrey Dahmer's reign. These are real. Check him, he shouted. As the officers wrestled Dahmer to the floor, the mask finally slipped. Dahmer began to struggle, shouting, "For what I did,
it's in the kitchen.
I should be dead."
It's inside the fridge.
But the true horror was yet to be revealed. Upon searching the kitchen, Officer Mueller opened the refrigerator. On the bottom shelf, sitting calmly next to a box of Arm & Hammer baking soda, was a freshly severed human head. Its eyes were open, staring blankly into the cold white light. In the freezer, 3 more heads were found wrapped in plastic bags. In the cooking pot on the stove were human hands. And inside that blue drum in the bedroom, 3 human torsos decomposing in acid. The police had not just found a killer. They had found a monster who had been living, killing, and consuming his victims right under the city's nose. But how? How does a quiet boy from Ohio become the Milwaukee Cannibal? To understand the end, we must go back to the beginning. Jeffrey Lionel Dahmer entered the world on May 21st, 1960. Initially, he appeared to be a happy, energetic child. But the seeds of darkness are often sown in the quietest of soils. At the age of 4, a pivotal change occurred. Jeffrey underwent surgery to correct a double hernia, tumor. It was a routine procedure for the doctors, but for the young boy, it was a trauma that seemed to sever his connection with the world. After the operation, he became strangely withdrawn. The once bubbly toddler turned into a silent ghost, lurking in the corners of his family home. His home life did not help. His mother, Joyce, suffered from severe depression and was often bedridden, consumed by a cocktail of prescription pills. His father, Lionel, was frequently away pursuing his degree in chemistry. Jeffrey was alone. As he grew older, his isolation morphed into a bizarre curiosity. While other boys played sports, Jeffrey became obsessed with the dead. He began collecting insects and skeletons of small animals. He would roam the rural roads of Ohio, looking for roadkill. A dead raccoon, a dog, a squirrel. To him, these were treasures. But it was not just about collecting. It was about control. His father, thinking he was bonding with his son over science, taught Jeffrey how to bleach the bones of these animals to preserve them. Lionel had no idea he was giving a future serial killer his first lessons in corpse disposal. Jeffrey loved the sound of the bones. He would keep them in a jar, shaking them to hear the rattle. He called them his fiddlesticks. He was fascinated by how the insides of a living thing fit together, and how easily they could be taken apart. By the time he reached high school at Revere High, he was an outcast. He would drink alcohol before class just to function, stumbling through the hallways in a daze. He performed strange antics to get attention, faking seizures and baying like a sheep, creating a persona he called the Dahmer. His classmates laughed, but they did not understand. This was not a class clown. This was a young man screaming into the void, trying to drown out the dark fantasies that were beginning to consume his mind. Fantasies of a jogger who ran past his house every day.
Strike him down.
Fantasies of laying in wait, striking him down, and keeping him.
It was a mistake.
He never touched the jogger. But the dam was about to break. The summer of 1978 was scorching hot in Ohio. Jeffrey had just graduated high school, but there was no celebration. His parents' marriage had finally imploded. His mother took his younger brother and left. His father was staying at a motel.
There's nothing left.
For the first time, Jeffrey Dahmer was completely and utterly unsupervised. It was June 18th, 1978. Jeffrey was driving his car, aimlessly patrolling the roads, drinking beer, and listening to the hum of the tires on the asphalt. He saw a hitchhiker. His name was Stephen Hicks. He was 18 years old, wearing a concert t-shirt, trying to get to a rock concert nearby. He looked friendly, alive, and unsuspecting. Jeffrey pulled over. He asked Stephen if he wanted a ride, and invited him back to his house for a few beers. Stephen agreed, thinking nothing of it. Back at the empty Dahmer house, they drank and listened to music. For a few hours, it was just two guys hanging out. But as the afternoon faded, Stephen said he needed to leave to catch his concert. That was the trigger. Jeffrey did not want him to leave. The feeling of abandonment triggered a violent panic. As Stephen walked toward the door, Jeffrey grabbed a 10-pound dumbbell bar. He came up behind the unsuspecting boy and swung it with all his strength. The sound of metal hitting the skull was sickening. Stephen fell to the floor, unconscious, but still alive. Panic turned to cold resolve. Jeffrey strangled him until the breathing stopped. Silence returned to the house.
stops.
But now, there was a body on the floor. Jeffrey did not call the police. He did not cry. He went to work. Using the skills he learned from dissecting roadkill, he dragged Stephen's body into the basement crawl space. He dismembered the body, carefully separating flesh from bone. He buried the remains in the backyard, shallow graves hidden beneath the foliage. But the story almost ended there. A few days later, Jeffrey was driving to a landfill to dispose of the final bags containing Stephen's clothes and remains. It was 3 a.m. He was swerving across the center line. Police lights flashed in his rearview mirror. His heart hammered against his ribs. The bags were in the back seat. The smell was noticeable. The officer approached the window. He asked Jeffrey what was in the bags. Jeffrey, summoning a calm he did not feel, simply said, "Trash." The officer shone his flashlight on the bags, paused for a terrifying second, and then turned the light away. He wrote Jeffrey a ticket for swerving and let him go. Jeffrey drove away, realizing two things. One, he was a killer. And two, he could get away with it. The monster had tasted blood, and he was hungry for more. After the murder of Stephen Hicks, Jeffrey tried to bury the memory along with the bones in his backyard. He attempted to live a normal life. He enrolled at Ohio State University. But the demons were loud, and alcohol was the only way to silence them. He dropped out after just 3 months, a ghost drifting through the campus halls. His father, Lionel, desperate to save his son from a life of alcoholism, suggested a drastic change: the United States Army. In January 1979, Jeffrey enlisted. He was sent to Baumholder, Germany, to serve as a combat medic. The irony was sickening. A man obsessed with death was now being trained to save lives. In the Army, Jeffrey was disciplined during the day, but chaotic at night. His drinking worsened, but there were darker rumors swirling around the barracks.
He's over there.
2 soldiers claimed they were drugged by Dahmer. They woke up groggy, realizing something had happened to them while they were unconscious, but unable to prove it. Dahmer was refining his technique. He was learning that drugs could give him the total control he craved, without the immediate mess of murder. By March 1981, the Army had enough. Deemed unsuitable for service due to chronic alcohol abuse, he was discharged. He returned to America, a failure once again. He had no job, no money, and nowhere to go. His father sent him to live with his grandmother, Catherine Dahmer, in West Allis, Wisconsin. It was supposed to be a fresh start. Catherine was a sweet, devout woman. She took Jeffrey to church. She cooked for him. She loved him unconditionally. For a brief moment, Jeffrey seemed to stabilize. He got a job at the Milwaukee Blood Plasma Center, drawing blood from donors. Later, he found work at the Ambrosia Chocolate Factory. But the darkness was not gone. It was simply waiting, nesting in the basement of that quiet suburban home. The house in West Allis became a house of horrors, hidden behind lace curtains and manicured lawns. By 1987, the urge to kill had returned with a vengeance. Jeffrey began frequenting the gay bars of Milwaukee, specifically Club 219. He was not looking for love. He was looking for victims. On November 20th, 1987, Jeffrey met a man named Stephen Tuomi. He invited Stephen back to the Ambassador Hotel, not wanting to risk bringing him to his grandmother's house just yet. What happened next is a blur, even to Dahmer. He woke up the next morning with a crushing headache. Lying next to him was Stephen, dead, his chest crushed, and blood soaking the sheets. Dahmer had no memory of the killing. He had blacked out. But instead of panic, he felt a grim practicality. He bought a large suitcase. He folded Stephen's body inside and took a taxi back to his grandmother's house. Think about that image. A young man dragging a suitcase containing a fresh corpse into the home of his elderly grandmother, who was likely watching television in the next room. He took the body to the basement. This basement became his laboratory. It was here that Dahmer began to experiment with acid, dissolving the flesh to keep the bones. He told his grandmother that the strange chemical smells were from his hobbies. He said he was stripping paint from old furniture, or doing science experiments. Catherine, trusting and naive, believed him. But the killing accelerated. In 1988, he brought a young boy, Jamie Dockstader, into the basement. Then another man, Richard Guerrero. The basement filled with the stench of death. Sometimes, Catherine would complain. "Jeff, what is that awful smell?"
Terrible in here.
Jeffrey would simply smile his shy smile and say, "It's just the chemicals. Grandma, don't worry about it." But he was getting reckless. In 1988, he lured a young boy, a 13-year-old, to the house. He drugged him, but the boy escaped, stumbling out into the street. Jeffrey was arrested, charged with sexual assault. This was the moment the system could have stopped him. He was convicted, but the judge was lenient. He was given work release, allowed to go to his job during the day and return to jail at night. The system saw a troubled man who needed help. They did not see the predator who had already killed 4 people in his grandmother's basement. By the time he was released in 1990, his grandmother had had enough of the smells and the strange men coming and going. She asked him to move out. It was time for Jeffrey to find his own place. A place where no one would ask questions about the smell or the drilling sounds at 3 in the morning. He needed apartment 213. The factory was about to open for business. In May 1990, Jeffrey Dahmer moved into the Oxford Apartments. The building was located at 924 North 25th Street, in a low-income neighborhood of Milwaukee. It was the perfect hunting ground. The area was plagued by crime. Sirens were constant background noise, and people learned to mind their own business. A white man living in a predominantly African-American neighborhood might have seemed out of place, but Dahmer kept to himself. Apartment 213 was small. It was a 1-bedroom unit, sparsely furnished, with a beige carpet that would soon be stained with fluids that no cleaning product could remove. Once, he was alone. The restraints were off. The killing became efficient, almost industrial. He targeted gay men, mostly men of color, whom he met at bars, bus stops, or bookstores. He would offer them money just to take photos, or to watch a movie, offering $50 or $100. Many were desperate. Many were drifters. When they disappeared, few people asked questions. Inside apartment 213, Dahmer brought in the tools of his trade. The 57-gallon blue plastic drum, purchased for barely anything, became his primary method of disposal. He would fill it with acid and place the torsos inside, turning human beings into a gray sludge that he could flush down the toilet. But he did not destroy everything. He began to keep souvenirs. Skulls, painted to look like plastic, were lined up on a shelf. A complete skeleton hung in the closet. He had a vision. A shrine. He wanted to build an altar made of 10 human skulls and 2 complete skeletons. A place where he could sit in the black armchair, surrounded by death, and feel a sense of power. The neighbors, like Vernell Bass, and Glenda Cleveland, constantly complained about the smell. "It smells like dead meat," Glenda would shout. Dahmer always had an excuse. "My freezer broke. I'm cooking pork roast. It's the sewer line." He was charming when he needed to be, and because he was a quiet, white man, people believed him. Or perhaps they were just too afraid to push harder. As the body count rose, simple murder was no longer enough for Jeffrey Dahmer. He did not just want to kill. In fact, killing was the part he hated the most. He hated that they had to leave him. He hated the finality of death. What he wanted was a companion who would never leave. Someone compliant. Someone who would stay with him forever without judgment.
Nothing lasts forever.
He wanted a zombie. Inspired by movies like The Exorcist and Return of the Jedi, specifically the character of the Emperor who had total control, Dahmer devised a horrific experiment. His first attempt was on a victim named Errol Lindsay. Dahmer drugged him with halcyon. While Errol was unconscious, but still alive, Dahmer took a power drill. He drilled a small hole into the man's skull, directly into the frontal lobe. Then, he took a turkey baster filled with hydrochloric acid and injected it into the brain. His hope was that this would destroy the part of the brain responsible for free will, leaving the victim in a vegetative state, a living doll that would obey his every command. It did not work. Errol Lindsay woke up, screaming in agony, his mind shattered but his body fighting for life. Dahmer, realizing his failure, strangled him to end the noise. He tried this technique again and again, sometimes with boiling water instead of acid. It was the ultimate violation, robbing a human being not just of their life, but of their very soul before they even died. And while these atrocities were happening behind the closed door of apartment 213, the real world came knocking. And then, the real world walked away. May 27th, 1991. This date should be etched in history as a day of shame. It was 2 a.m. 2 young women, Sandra Smith and Nicole Childress, were walking down the street near the Oxford Apartments. They saw something that made their blood run cold. A young boy, naked, bleeding from the rectum, and unable to speak, was stumbling down the alley. He looked drugged, like a puppet with cut strings. This was Konerak Sinthasomphone. He was only 14 years old. The women called 911. Police officers Joseph Balcerzak and John Gabrish arrived at the scene. They saw the boy. They saw the blood. They saw his inability to stand. And then, Jeffrey Dahmer arrived. He was calm, composed, acting the part of the concerned lover.
Please tell me what's happening.
He told the officers,
I'm his partner.
"This is my boyfriend.
I have nothing
He is 19.
left to say to them.
He just had too much to drink. We had a little lover's spat." Dahmer even produced Polaroid photos of Konerak in suggestive poses to prove they were a couple. The women screamed at the police. "He is a child! Look at him!
Please!
He is bleeding!"
He didn't do anything!
But the officers did not listen to the women. They saw a white man speaking calmly
It's okay.
and two black women shouting, and they made their choice. They believed Dahmer. In a move that defies all logic and humanity, the officers escorted Konerak back into apartment 213. They walked him back into the slaughterhouse. They checked the apartment briefly, smelled the stench of death, but accepted Dahmer's excuse about the broken freezer. They left Konerak on the couch, laughed with Dahmer, and walked out the door. As the police car drove away, the neighbors watched in horror. Inside the apartment, the mask fell off. Within minutes of the police leaving, Dahmer injected acid into Konerak's brain. The boy died shortly after. The tragedy is even deeper than you think. Remember the boy from 1988? The one who escaped Dahmer's grandmother's house? His name was Konerak Sinthasomphone. Konerak was his younger brother. Within minutes of the police leaving, we finally identified the suspect. As the same family was victimized twice by the same monster. And both times, the system failed to stop him. After this night, Dahmer knew he was untouchable. If the police could hand a bleeding child back to him, who was going to stop him?
I finally understand.
The final countdown had begun. After the police returned Konerak Sinthasomphone to his death, Jeffrey Dahmer realized something terrifying. He was invisible. He realized that society did not care about the people he was killing. To the authorities, his victims were just statistics.
Summer of death.
This realization triggered the Summer of Death. In the summer of 1991, Dahmer completely lost control. He was no longer killing to satisfy a monthly urge. He was killing to silence the noise in his head. He quit his job at the chocolate factory, living off his savings. He spent his days drinking and hunting. Between June and July of 1991 alone, he murdered 4 men: Matt Turner, Jeremiah Weinberger, Oliver Lacey, and Joseph Braidhoft. The apartment could not handle the volume of death. The blue drum was full. The acid could not dissolve the bodies fast enough. The freezer was packed tight with heads and hearts. Dahmer was living inside a decomposing nightmare. He slept on a mattress stained with blood, surrounded by the smell of rotting meat. He had to keep the windows open and burn incense constantly. But the smell seeped into the walls, into his clothes, into his skin. Psychologically, he was spiraling. Psychologists call this a death wish. Subconsciously, he wanted to be caught. He wanted someone to stop the machine he had built. On July 22nd, 1991, he approached Tracy Edwards. He invited Edwards back to the apartment, but this time, Dahmer was sloppy. He handcuffed only one of Edwards' wrists. He was distracted by the movie playing on the television, The Exorcist 3. When Edwards saw the butcher knife, he knew he was going to die. He waited for a moment when Dahmer looked away, punched him in the face, and ran out the door. And that brings us back to the beginning. The running man, the police car, the discovery. The monster's reign was over, but the horror of the trial was just beginning. When Jeffrey Dahmer was arrested, he did not ask for a lawyer. He waived his rights immediately. He sat in the interrogation room, drank coffee, and talked for 60 hours straight. He told detectives everything.
6 hours.
He identified the victims from the skulls he kept. He explained the cooking, the drilling, the eating. I created this horror and it only makes sense I do everything to put an end to it, he said. The trial began in January 1992. Dahmer pleaded guilty but insane. His defense team argued that no sane person could commit such atrocities. But the prosecution argued otherwise. They said he was calculating. He lied to the police. He planned every step. That is not insanity. That is evil. The jury agreed. Jeffrey Dahmer was found sane. He was sentenced to 15 consecutive life terms, a total of 957 years in prison. During the sentencing, the courtroom erupted in raw emotion. Rita Isbell, the sister of victim Errol Lindsay, screamed at Dahmer, charging the table before being restrained by guards. It was the voice of the families, finally heard. Dahmer was sent to the Columbia Correctional Institution in Portage, Wisconsin. He adapted to prison life quietly. He attended Bible study.
To the likeness of his death,
He even got baptized.
we shall be also in the resurrection.
But prison has its own form of justice. On the morning of November 28th, 1994, Dahmer was assigned to clean the gym bathrooms. He was left unattended for 20 minutes with 2 other inmates, Jesse Anderson and Christopher Scarver. Christopher Scarver, a convicted murderer who believed he was chosen by God, had been watching Dahmer. He hated how Dahmer would play with his food to taunt other inmates, fashioning limbs out of prison meat. Scarver followed Dahmer into the bathroom. He pulled a 20-inch metal bar he had removed from a piece of weight equipment. He confronted Dahmer with a newspaper clipping of his crimes. Did you do this? He asked. Dahmer tried to escape, but there was no way out. Scarver struck him twice over the head with the metal bar. 1 hour later, Jeffrey Dahmer was pronounced dead.
These tools, however,
The man who had bludgeoned his first victim with a dumbbell met his end by being bludgeoned with a metal bar. The cycle of violence was complete. Jeffrey Dahmer is dead, but the scars he left on Milwaukee remain. 17 young men lost their lives,
and so the youths.
and the most terrifying part is not the monster himself, but how long we let him walk among us. Now, I want to turn this over to you. Dahmer was stopped by police multiple times and let go. Do you believe the authorities were simply incompetent? Or was there a deeper prejudice that allowed a white killer to victimize minority communities for so long?
Regarding the comments on the broadcast,
Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you want to explore more files from the dark side of history, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon. Which file should we open next? Tell us below. Until then, stay observant.